Have you ever seen money that wasn't metal, paper, or digital? Just a promise everyone agreed to believe? That promise built ports, lit up palaces, and still runs your life. It has no weight. It has no color. But when it breaks, everything else does. Welcome to Money Lore. Today we uncover the hidden empire of credit, how merchants in Venice and Florence turned trust into value, and how that invisible system became the backbone of modern finance. Credit began with a simple problem. Ships move slower than business. A cargo of English wool might take weeks to reach Italy. Pirates waited, storms waited, bandits waited on the roads between fairs. Carrying metal was dangerous and slow, but trade couldn't wait for chests of coin to cross the sea. Merchants needed a way to move value without moving silver. The Italian city-states invented one. In the 13th and 14th centuries, Venetian and Florentine houses began using something that looked like ordinary paper but behaved like money: the bill of exchange. One merchant sold cloth in London and handed the buyer a written order: "Pay my partners in Florence on a set date." The buyer's agent paid a London banker. A partner in Florence released funds at home. No coins across the channel. Value traveled on handwriting and reputation. That paper didn't float on air. It floated on names. A banker in Florence honored a bill from London because he knew the signature, the family, the ledger behind it. Trust left the marketplace and moved into the books. That is where Florence quietly changed the world. Great houses, Bardi, Peruzzi, later the Medici, built webs of correspondence from Bruges to Avignon. They kept accounts with one another and settled only the leftover difference in metal. The true currency wasn't gold, it was the agreement that the books would balance. To keep that agreement honest, Italian merchants refined a habit that still governs every bank in business: double entry bookkeeping. Every entry had a twin, debit and credit, so the story of a transaction could be checked from two angles. Numbers stopped being a memory and became a map. When people argued, the map settled it. When rumors spread, the books cut through them. Discipline turned promises into an instrument. Bills of exchange did something even more radical than moving money without metal. They created time. A bill payable 90 days after sight gave a voyage the time it needed to arrive, unload, and sell. Time itself became part of the payment. Merchants could breathe between now and later without hauling coin. A good name let a trader buy today and pay when the ship docked. That rhythm, ship, sail, settlement, became the heartbeat of Mediterranean commerce. Of course, a heartbeat can race. Credit gathers itself into centers, and when a center fails, the tremor travels. Florence learned that the hard way in the 1340s. The Bardi and the Peruzzi extended massive loans to Edward III of England for war. He defaulted. Two giants toppled. Shops shuttered an ocean away. The lesson wasn't an aphorism, it was a street with closed doors. Credit doesn't just connect partners, it concentrates risk. And when a royal promise breaks, ledgers in quiet neighborhoods collapse with it. If Italy invented the language of credit, Amsterdam turned it into grammar. 17th century merchants deposited coin at the Bank of Amsterdam and paid each other by transferring balances on the bank's books. The money in those books, bank money, was steady and trusted because the bank kept it honest. Once again, value moved faster than metal, this time resting on an institution with rules. Payment became a line in a ledger rather than a weight in a sack. Trade accelerated because trust had a public home. London added ambition and speed. Goldsmiths who stored coins for the public noticed something. Not everyone asked for their metal back at the same time. They began to lend part of those deposits to earn interest. Receipts for stored gold started to circulate because people trusted the goldsmith's promise more than the dangers of carrying coin. Out of that habit grew banknotes, discount houses, and a bond market capable of financing canals, docks, and eventually an empire. The city didn't replace Venice, it scaled it. Reputation became standardized. A signature on a bill was no longer just a family name, it was a brand. By the 19th century, this system reached across the Atlantic. A Boston merchant shipping cotton to Liverpool could draw a bill accepted by a top London house and sell that accepted bill immediately for cash at home. The paper itself became near money because the acceptor's name guaranteed payment on the date. The buyer wasn't holding metal, he was holding a reputation with a due date. What began as a workaround for pirates had become the nervous system of global trade. Credit didn't only finance voyages, it organized the way institutions worked together. Clearinghouses and financial centers netted what banks owed one another each day so that only the remainder had to be settled in cash. Central banks evolved into lenders of last resort, standing behind sound collateral during panics, so that temporary fear didn't become permanent failure. Letters of credit smoothed trade between strangers who had never met. Each layer pushed metal further into the background and pulled trust further into the foreground. If all of this sounds distant, look in your wallet. A credit card is a traveling bill of exchange. You buy now because a network promises to pay the merchant and to collect from you later. Your credit score is a modern family name, calculated by algorithm instead of gossip. When your bank sends money to another bank in seconds, the wires aren't hauling cash. They're updating ledgers across a trusted web. The medieval trick is still the trick. Move value with promises and make the promises solid enough to behave like cash. Because credit lives on belief, its enemies are familiar. War shakes production and taxes trust with inflation. Defaults reveal too many promises riding on too little income. Fraud tries to hack the reputational layer and hopes the books are sloppy. Opacity breeds rumor. Panic outruns facts. When that happens, people reach for whatever the system can't counterfeit: foreign currency, commodities, food, fuel. And the web tightens again only when someone credible stands up and takes responsibility for the books. That word, credible, is the quiet power behind the whole story. Amsterdam earned it by holding reserves. London sold it with famous acceptances. Florence lost it when kings used ledgers like war chests. In every century, the strongest currency was not the metal itself. It was the institution whose word made paper feel like metal. When that word held, strangers traded like neighbors. When it didn't, neighbors stopped trading at all. The hidden magic of credit isn't magic, it's choreography. A buyer promises a seller, a banker stands between them. A book records the promise. A court enforces the book if the promise fails. Each part allows the other parts to move faster, safer, farther. That is why bills replace chests, why balance sheets replace bribes at border posts, why a clerk with neat handwriting could speed up commerce more than a guard with a sword. The empire wasn't a place, it was a rhythm, and the rhythm hasn't stopped. When a factory finances inventory for 90 days, it's using medieval time. When a startup raises a line of credit against next quarter's revenue, it's sailing under Venetian wind. When banks net billions of payments at a clearinghouse and settle the remainder at day's end, they're doing in seconds what correspondence once did in letters that took a week. The surface is new, the structure is old. There is a temptation to think credit is fragile because it is invisible. The opposite is often true. Properly kept books have stopped more panics than speeches. A reputation decades in the making can carry a city through months of fear. A network with many honest nodes can reroute around a failure and keep the market alive. The thing that breaks credit isn't the lack of metal, it's the lack of memory. When institutions forget how to keep promises, paper becomes paper again. So when you hear that money is trust, this is what it means. A merchant in Venice discovered he could replace a guard on a ship with a sentence on a page, and the sentence would travel faster and safer than any soldier. A banker in Florence learned that 2 columns of numbers could hold a community together when tempers ran hot. A city in Holland proved that a public ledger, managed with discipline, could anchor an ocean of trade. A street in London turned names into instruments and instruments into an empire. And all of it somehow flows into the card you tap, the invoice you email, the transfer that clears while you're making coffee. Credit made the modern world by freeing value from weight. It let ideas move ahead of goods, let work begin before payment arrived, and let strangers cooperate at a distance. The price of that freedom was never gold. It was character, counted in ledgers. When character failed, the numbers told on it. When character held, the numbers carried nations. If this gave you a clearer way to see how trust becomes money, subscribe. History keeps the blueprint. Money lore keeps it readable.